All right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone had a nice lunch. Okay, we're ready to start. Lunch is over. Okay, it's back to work, unless anyone had a working lunch. Now are we on speakers? Speakers for item 11? We're done speakers? I don't know if I moved this motion. Did I move this motion? Did everyone get a chance to speak on item 11? No? Okay. Yes, no, I'm sure she has some. Okay, so we're on speakers for item 11, and Councillor Bradford, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair Pasternak, and to the committee members for the opportunity to speak today. This is actually my favorite committee that I'm not a member of, so it's great to be here. Yeah, great to be here with you. I'm here today for two reasons. First and foremost is to give my full support to the Cycling Network Plan update that you're considering here today. Staff have done a tremendous job of taking the 2016 plan, updating on the progress today, and charting a path forward that's really going to allow us to implement and build out our near-term priorities. I think that's a helpful way of doing it. I think it's going to result, as we're going to see in motions coming forward here, more action on safe cycling infrastructure and provide us a pathway to actually get it delivered very much in this term of council. So I'm excited about that. The second and most important reason I'm here today is to join my community, the deputants that we heard today, in actually calling for the design of a cycling pilot on Danforth. I know that my community, road safety is a huge priority. This is something that I hear over and over every day, week in, out, emails, phone calls, community meetings, and the time is now to advance that work. The deputants that we heard today, and I want to thank them for their participation, the 400 plus pieces of correspondence that the committee here has received, the hundreds of emails that I've received personally, makes one message very clear for us, and that is that road safety is a major concern for residents of the Danforth corridor. Danforth is one of the most heavily used cycling thoroughfares in the city that doesn't actually have a bike lane. Every day I personally join thousands of cyclists who make the trip to work, shop at our local businesses, visit friends, and we do it by cycling on Danforth. I think it's a critical connection, and you guys know this, east-west cycling through the heart of the city of Toronto. As our city continues to grow, as more and more people come here, we are a magnet for jobs and talent and immigration. We aren't building more roads, but we need to facilitate transportation. We need to facilitate the new ways and the new modes that people are moving in this city, and complete streets are the best and safest way that we can do that. It's also worth noting that we've got billions of dollars of transit infrastructure literally under the ground in Danforth and some of the most iconic neighborhoods in the city. So Danforth should be a complete street to go along and complement that. The motion that we're presenting here today, and I want to thank my colleague and friend, Councillor McKelvey, for bringing this forward on the committee, big supporter as well, really does chart a path forward for us on Danforth. It asks planning and complete street study to be completed by June 21st, or June 2021, and to solidify the commitment in the report. And the way we're setting it up there is so that we can actually take the outcomes and the recommendations that come from a very substantial consultation process that we're going to go through together as a community and actually move forward with those recommendations. It gives staff the opportunity, as we heard here today, to engage with the community in a meaningful way and substantive way over the next coming months. We're currently evaluating submissions for an engagement consultant. There will be public consultations starting later this summer and into the fall. And the work plan that we've developed on the corridor study already contemplates 5 public meetings, 5 stakeholder advisory committee meetings, 3 interest groups meetings, pop-up consultations, and a monthly steering committee meeting, which myself and Councillor Fletcher will be sitting on. After the extensive consultation, we will be presented with a work plan update 1 year from now. That's what we have in the motion. And as part of that, staff will be coming back with a detailed design for what could be a Danforth cycling pilot. This is a critical step. We have to do the design work, and as we heard from staff here today, we get better designs and we get better outcomes when we work with the community. We shouldn't be striving to create unnecessary delays when it comes to cycling infrastructure, but it is really important to bring people along in that process. I've heard loud and clear from our community that this is something that we want to move
Councillor
forward.
Bradford, if you could.
And I'm happy
wrap
to do that today and appreciate the support of my colleagues here, and looking forward to getting it done.
Great, thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bradford. I am happy to move the motion on behalf of Councillor Bradford that's on the screen. This will consider prioritizing and accelerating implementation of bike lanes on Danforth from Coxwell to Dawes. And I am a councillor from the suburbs, and I am 16 kilometers away from the easternmost part of this at Dawes Road, but I do think it's extremely important that we build out the network through the core. I look forward to riding my bike to Dawes and Danforth and joining Councillor Bradford on a ride into work once this is built. I have some training to do, as that's a total trip of more than 26 kilometers. But in addition, as this is a really important project for the city to build not just these lanes, but also those across the city, because the Transform TO goal is that we have 75% of people walking or biking for trips less than 5 kilometers by 2050. And so this is an important step in that direction. And I will, as the years go by here in my term of council, be asking that staff start to break down that goal into smaller sub-steps. So we have a goal for 2030, we have a goal for 2040, because I don't want us to get to 2045 and say, hey, we got 5 years and we still have not enough bike lanes built, and we also don't have enough people walking or biking trips under 5 kilometers. And in addition, you can expect to hear from me probably next year about trying to put more pressure on the recreational lanes that we have in Scarborough, because they are also important commuter corridors as well, but that being the Meadow Way and the Scarborough Waterfront Trail. I think both are transect all of Scarborough. They're somewhere where we should be prioritizing implementing more resources and getting those built so that we have that recreational opportunity, but also that ability to use them as a transportation corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKelvey. Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much. I've got a couple of motions. Coming up onto the screen. The first one being that City Council requests the General Manager, Transportation Services to report back by the last quarter of 2021 regarding implementation progress of the cycling network plan, including updates on outcomes such as number of kilometers of cycling infrastructure installed, network coverage, proportion of people in close proximity to the cycling network, and the impact on safety and cycling mode share. 2, City Council requests the General Manager, Transportation Services work with the Chief Planner and Executive Director of City Planning to create a working group of city staff and local stakeholders to assess complete street options for University Avenue in conjunction with the TO Core Great Streets Framework. 3, the City Council requests the General Manager, Transportation Services consider as part of the planned resurfacing of Harvard Street an update to the existing bike an update that probably should be upgrade to the existing bike lane to cycle track, including appropriate consultation with stakeholders. 4, City Council requests General Manager Transportation Services to initiate planning design consultation for an extension of the Bloor Street West cycle track from Shaw Street to Hyde Park Avenue, with implementation targeted to take place as early as summer 2020. 5, that City Council requests the General Manager Transportation Services to consider as part of the Bloor East cycle track improvements the feasibility of establishing a separate bike lane on Bloor Street from Avenue Road to Church Street, connecting the Bloor Street cycle track on Bloor Street East and Bloor Street West. 6, City Council requests General Manager Transportation Services to triple the number of bike rings installed on the Danforth. 7, City Council requests the General Manager Transportation Services take measures to improve pedestrian safety, especially for seniors, and to serve seniors' residences along the Danforth. And 8, City Council requests General Manager Transportation Services to initiate the detailed design of a pilot project from eastbound and westbound cycle tracks on the Danforth from Coxwell to Broadview, which takes loading and unloading issues into account. 9, is this the last one? please be the last one. City Council requested the Toronto Police Services to consider citing the Toronto Police Services main bike collision reporting center at the new station at Danforth and Coxwell. So those last four are on behalf of Councillor Fletcher, who would like to move them in conjunction with Councillor Bradford's motions along the Danforth to accelerate some of the planning, along with some other pieces that she'd like to see moved forward. Before that, I outlined some improvements to the plan that I'd like to see done, including a midterm report back, not a full redesign of the bike plan. I don't want them to have to go through that level of work again that quickly, but to just give us an update, to give us an idea of what is advancing and what we're having trouble moving forward. Partly because we had a really ambitious bike plan, and even in areas of the city, like the downtown core, where we had a community that was very supportive of moving forward and a councillor that was very supportive, it was difficult to move projects forward. For one reason or another, we didn't get as far as I think we wanted to in our network coverage in the last couple of years. I'd like to change that. I'd also like to try to make the plan as presented more ambitious and how fast we advance on some of these. How much of the network is going to be just painted lines, and how much is going to be a structured cycle track network. Some of them are very local for me, and some of them are quite a bit bigger. I bike every day. I use some of these actual exact routes that we talk about every day. It is still very dangerous out there on the streets of Toronto if you're choosing to ride a bike. Apparently it is if you're just walking as well. And we need to do all we can in the limited amount of time we have here on council to start achieving these targets. Not only is it just trying to make things safer and reduce the number of casualties that we see out on the road, but we also have a very strong target so that we help achieve our transform TO goals and in our reduction of emissions. We have very strong targets so we can try to get people out of cars and relieving congestion in our city. We also, and should, have strong policies and want to achieve these targets to help build a more healthy and active city. And that's what I hope we can get more ambitious in. I hope we can advance some of these projects faster. Some of these are in response to what we heard today from Citywide activists and communities, and some of which I get from both my own community as well as my the Ward 11 Cycle TO Advocacy Committee. So I'm happy to bring these forward and hope that you'll support them.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. You have questions for the mover? Okay. Deputy Mayor Minowong?
All right, the first one. City Council direct the General Manager of Transportation Services to, similar in concept to the warrant process for traffic calming, develop a proposal for a warrant system for installation of cycling infrastructure, which includes report on the merits of a warrant system for the installation of cycling infrastructure, which includes benchmarks for bike traffic volumes and other metrics, reporting back in the first quarter of 2020. So that's fairly self-explanatory. If you want to put in a bike lane, we have to put in a system in place to evaluate where they should be put and where they shouldn't be put. The second one is City Council direct the General Manager of Transportation Services to develop a back-end review process for evaluating the success of new cycling infrastructure that measures usage against defined metrics such as number of cyclists. This would help within the cycling space. If something's working very well, it'll reinforce that these cycling initiatives are justified. The third one, and this is I've had this one thinking about this one for a long time because it's done in other places. City Council direct the General Manager of Transportation Services to develop a pilot project to allow bike traffic on sidewalks, for example, where there's a high volume of car traffic and fewer pedestrians, and report back by the fourth quarter of 2020 on the merits of allowing cyclists on designated sidewalks. So, for example, you would never do this in the downtown, like on Yonge Street or anything, but you know, I know Councillor McKelvey is nodding her head. We know that in the suburbs, people walk within subdivisions, but they don't walk on busy roads. So, for example, I'll use the space in my area on Lawrence Avenue between Victoria Park and the Don Valley Parkway. Hardly anybody walks on those sidewalks. And instead of putting in a separated bike lane, you could actually let them ride on the sidewalks because there aren't a lot of pedestrians. And still, even in that context, they would still, given the existing legislation, it would still require them to give the right-of-way to pedestrians. So what you actually do is use the existing infrastructure that's underutilized to make cyclists safer, and you only do it in places where there's not a lot of pedestrians. And I know that this is done in other jurisdictions. So I'm asking for a report just to consider that, not to take any decision on it, but just like, let's see what other jurisdictions are doing and let's have a discussion about it. It's not made for every community, but you know, there are some places where you got sidewalks that nobody uses, let's put them to good use. And then finally, City Council direct the General Manager of Transportation Services to perform a count on cyclists using the Flemington Park and Thorncliffe bike lanes in August 2020. So they've been in for a bit now. We need a little bit of time to let people get used to them, but there's a big pushback in the Flemington community and also the Thorncliffe community. There was a meeting in the wintertime that the mayor attended with Councillor Robinson and I. The community was furious about those bike lanes. And so the staff said, well, you got to give it a chance. So let's give it a chance, but then let's do a count and see if these bike lanes are working out. So the Fleming, I'm not saying, so I'd like to see what the counts are and get a report back next year. So if it works in the community, you can go back to the community and say, look, these bike lanes are really being used a lot, and it kind of basically tells them that it's being used a lot. And if it's not, we should have a discussion about this. We need to be able to defend our bike lanes. And we should be able to defend the numbers. And that's the reason for that. Now, do you have my other motion, the amendment to Councillor? Yes. So then, this is Councillor Layton's motion, because I didn't know he was going to raise University Avenue, so I just quickly did this. Councillor, consider alternative streets to University Avenue, such as, I didn't say Berkeley, I said it was a different street. It was Beverly. So,
It has lanes.
not all the way down. Does it have all the way down?
To Queen.
Is it Beverly to Queen? Okay. Well, you know what? I'd like to consider alternatives to so just take a alternative to University Avenue. So what you have to know about this is back about 9 years ago, I put in, I was chair of this committee, and we put in the first network. And the network was Sherburne, Richmond, Wellesley, and there wasn't the fourth leg to make a network, a square network in the downtown, was, I think there was another street. And we really wanted to do that, but Adam Vaughan, the local councillor at the time, was vehemently opposed to it. I mean, the irony was someone who said he was in favor of bike lanes was massively opposed to a bike lane in his neighborhood. Before we decide to have a discussion about University Avenue, or if we are going to have a discussion about University Avenue, I don't think it's unreasonable to have a discussion of what is the proper street to put a bike lane on. Not just exclusively look at University, but look at all the side streets or all the available streets that's going to move bikes, because University Avenue is a really important street, and to exclusively just look at that street, I think is the wrong approach. So that's why let's see. There you go. That's what I'd like to do. Okay?
Question of the mover.
Yeah.
Oh. So just on the previous motions,
Yeah.
have you put any thought to what the cost might be to do the evaluation after on every bike lane?
Well, I have thought about what you need to do. So I think I think Councillor Bradford's motion that Councillor McKelvey moved for him said to put counters in. So part of that evaluation would be putting some type of counter in to get some sort of, like, how many people are using them? Mm-hmm. So I think that if we do have counters, that all it would, I don't think it would have to be massively expensive. I mean, at a first instance, the first thing you want to know is how many people are using them?
Because I got the impression from the previous item that you were more interested in investing in actual upgrading of roads rather than into other safety measures like lights. And this to me, would take money out of the transportation budget.
Yeah, so,
put
Mr. Chair,
towards
the difference
counting
is, my approach in terms of evaluating the back end of whether the cycle tracks work. My approach costs, and this idea costs thousands of dollars. The approach in the previous item would cost tens of millions of dollars. So the scale of it, in terms of putting a signal light at every bus stop, is infinitesimally smaller than just putting in a couple of counters.
But do you
It's a lot
anticipate
cheaper.
that counting the number of bikes will actually save lives on our roads? Or I'm just wondering if, because you're prioritizing now counting the bikes after you've installed a bike lane over installing more bike lanes or just even repaving roads.
I think, I think the cycling community and the public in general deserve to know, and if you want to add credibility to the cycling initiative and the bike lanes that we're going to choose, and also provide some discipline to our staff to pick areas where cyclists are actually going to be, it actually adds to the program to have some discipline to put bike lanes in where people are going to use them.
I'm not denying the value of installing and investing in counters. I just think I was surprised to hear you wanting to invest the transportation's limited budget in counting bicycles rather than actually.
I think this was
repaving roads.
So I'm just
clarification
gonna-
of the motion.
Let me just answer that question briefly. There's a nice man here who wasn't part of kind of the regular cycling people that we see here. And he and the community that he lives in showed, let's say, a healthy skepticism toward the installation of a cycling network. You validate the network and the capital program by actually getting those numbers.
Mm-hmm. Again, I'm just pointing to the inconsistencies that I see in that.
It's entirely consistent. I'm happy to sit down with you and show and explain to you why.
If I can ask just one last question on item number 1.
Yeah.
Because part of the reason why we're building bike lanes is to get people more comfortable so they'll actually start biking. But if you start from the reverse by saying you need to have a certain number of cyclists in order to justify putting a bike lane in. Is that where you're trying to go with that, or am I incorrect? I may be incorrect about that.
I would.
Because to get
I
baseline
think there's
data,
a-
it's good.
Yeah, so again, at the front end, I think there's a lot of skepticism toward pulling the trigger on bike lanes, and I think that we do all sorts of studies beforehand. I mean, for example, Councillor Bradford's motion talked about doing a lot of studies. And one of the things that we need to do at the front end is instead of saying, let's move forward with this without any targets, so you're going to do a study and you're going to get something back, and it's going to say, so many cyclists. We should set a standard and say, we would like this many cyclists, and then see if we can meet that target. If you don't set a target at the front end, it's hard to evaluate at the back end whether the thing worked or not.
It's just we're adding a lot of layers of cost to installing
and it's only a report.
single bike lane.
So,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Fair enough.
I would let council have the final word on all of these
And I suspect they
motions.
will.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, don't defeat it here. Let's send all this stuff up to council and let council decide. Anyway, that's only cheap advice from the chair. Are we done?
I am.
Are speakers done? Do you want to take it as a package, or you want to vote for individual motion?
I got it. I know the Councillor Layton's motion, some of his things I've got.
You want to do that ad seriatim?
And Councillor Min Wong's motion to whatever this one is,
Okay,
then.
Yeah.
fair enough. We won't take it as a package. Let's vote on it individually.
Well, I'll put yours up first. Oh, or mine.
You want to take his first? Do we have to take,
Hold on a second.
or do we take the amendment first? Okay.
The way he wants to. It's not replacing, it's to add.
It says amend, it doesn't say replace or add.
Oh, he wants to separate my amendment.
No, is
No,
your
it's-
motion in addition to his number 2, or is it
Does
replacing
it
number 2?
replace it? Doesn't say delete.
No,
You just say
it's-
amend, you don't.
No,
say
he
add.
wants to look at university, and mine is to say, you can look at university, but look at all of them
As well
together.
as the others.
So it's
That's right.
Okay.
So
So in addition.
in addition,
That's
it's
right.
not a delete and add.
Yeah.
Okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Councillor McKelvey's motion on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? No, that's unanimous. Councillor Layton's motions. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Is that it? The item is amended. All those in,
Councillor
Mine,
Councillor
all
Min
mine.
Wong's motions.
The best for last.
oh, Councillor Menawong's motions? There we go. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. The item is amended. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. I'll throw it up to council and let them fight over it.
No, there's no, there won't be any fight on this one, not at all.
Just as a matter of technicality, we had moved a motion earlier this morning to have a cutoff of 10:30 for deputants. There have been 3 deputants that asked to speak on the last item. I'm willing to waive this.
What's the last item?
Cycling network plan.
And
Oh, sorry, it's number 12. Then we have walk-on items.
what's it, 12? Oh,
So I would move that we add these 3 deputants for this item only.
I actually don't know who the 3 people are. They would need to come up. Somebody's hoping that.
All those in favor? Opposed? All those in favor? Opposed?
you already got your 3.
Carried. Okay.
Want to speak to the
Yeah, so there were 3 deputants from the public who've come to the committee they'd like to depute. Please register with the clerk, and we'll put you on the list. But it's on the current item, so it'd be appreciated if you could do it right away. Hamish Wilson?
Afternoon. Thank you for your time, and let's hope we can do a lot more. Certainly, it's nice to see some small things being approved and brought forward. I worry that maybe they're not the more important small stuff. For me, the bit of Bloor Street East between Sherburne and Church is also subway relief. I almost think that, well, I do think that should be a much higher priority for actually putting in bike facilities or upgrading the safety than all the other things that are on the agenda here. With Argyle, going back about a decade, I guess, to the West End Bikeways route submission summary that was part of a quick start program for bikeways. We see that the east-west roads in the sort of rose-pink salmon were what the cyclists that were consulted wanted to actually see. Bluer was not included in this thing because it was going to be a separate study from 2008, and then that didn't happen. We wanted to save $500,000, and so the whole study was scrapped. So Argyle is a little bit there. But quite honestly, it's very frustrating that, yes, it's something, but it's always the smaller side streets that we're doing, not the larger connections. And Parkdale is a neighborhood improvement area. There are very limited opportunities for getting from Parkdale into this area. I.e. Queen is very important, so is King, and then, okay, there's Brock and Lansdowne, but it's all dodgy. It was noted in the bike plan that there's actually a large hole, which shows up kind of in this area here. Plus, there are the streetcar track issues. And if you look at the bike plan as well, the 2001 bike plan, it's very interesting that in the Parkdale area, we haven't actually managed to do even the signed routes that are shown up on Liberty Street, and there's nothing on King Street yet, and I don't think the Queensway actually has even the signs put up. So that's where, how costly are signs to put up? So yes, we're doing things, but it feels so inferior, and it's kind of disappointing. The other aspect to things, it's not merely putting in a bike facility, but also making sure that it's maintained year-round. This is just one image of this is Bloor on Sherbourne. If you're going to put in a bike lane, please do the maintenance in a proper way, and don't plow it all out. Just give us a consistent half, please. Just a consistent half. At the Bloor Annex area, separated lane, what would happen was it was beautifully plowed, and then, end of the contract, we'll just dump the snow here, go on to the next one. So it got totally unusable. So winter maintenance, regardless of what you do, please do it way better.
Thank you very much. Glenn Levin? Thank you for coming. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Councillor Pasternak. Thank you, councillors. I'd like to thank the committee for coming up with a comprehensive and ambitious plan for adding to the existing network of bike lanes. I'm here today to appeal to the planners to consider slightly amending that plan, and I'm here to do that for safety reasons. The curvature of Vaughan Road creates some unique problems at corner intersections. The intersection of Oakwood and Vaughan Road shows this very clearly. It is actually called a 5-point intersection, and cars traveling south are prohibited from turning right because it amounts to a U-turn. In fact, it's actually more like a V-turn because of the sharp angle. Now, this restriction was not put in for the purpose of redirecting traffic because Vaughan Road is already capped where the Fairbank Metrolink station is being built. So this restriction was put in for safety reasons. The right turn is banned because it is a maneuver that cannot be safely executed without entering the lane of oncoming traffic from Vaughan Road. The plan for a new bike lane involves moving parking from the north side of Vaughan Road to the south side. And I've come here today to say that as a driver who would have to back out of my driveway at a very sharp angle, the sight line is dramatically compromised if parked cars were there, and it would force me to back into the path of oncoming traffic westbound on Vaughan Road. This, I feel, creates a safety hazard for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists. So I would like to urge the committee to perhaps consider slightly amending the plan by suspending the plan to move parking from the north side of Vaughan Road to the south side. I also would like to suggest that they consider adding a bike lane on Vaughan Road that would start at the Fairbank Metrolink station and go perhaps as far as possible southbound towards St. Clair. I think that this plan would find favor with all the constituents because there's no need for any changes to the bylaw amendments for moving parking, and it would be lower cost as well as high value because you're adding even more bike lanes than is
You
currently
could
envisaged
wrap
by the
up, it'd be
plan.
appreciated.
That's
That's it. Any questions for the deputant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Jeff Horodowski? You can just have a seat over there at the microphone. Thank you very much for coming. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. So the area is going to have a lot of development, a lot of more people moving into the area. Traffic is just going to go horrendous. And to close off a lane or... Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm from the Silverview Community Association, which is Yonge and Finch area. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and anyways, I don't believe there's been enough consultation, I guess is my basic thing. There's been some, but there was a meeting with 40 people. Don't even know if those 40 people were from our neighborhood. So I just don't see, I see that we need to do more consultation and talk about where to put this, where to put the bike lanes. In our neighborhood, I've spoken to several neighbors and I have not found a lot of support for this. So, and I don't know if all the studies have actually been done. I've not seen anything on paper. I don't know how this is just being pushed through like this.
All right. You're done?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. We have questions for you. Deputy Mayor Minawong.
Are you referring to the Willowdale Avenue cycle track?
Yes.
Okay. And so you've had a couple, I mean, there's this one, and then the other one that's kind of controversial is the young, there was something that came up on the last term of council on Yonge Street.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people that are angry about that too, right?
I believe, well, I've heard a lot of that, yes, true.
Would the Willowdale Avenue cycle track sort of replace the need for the one on Yonge Street?
It would, but it's still not the right place, I believe. It's still too busy. I don't see how there's going to be a lot of safety. I really don't.
And where is the right place, sir?
Willowdale?
Where's the right place?
Next street over, Maxim or Doris, coming up on Doris. Doris is where all the schools are. A lot of kids would ride their bike there. And if you went to Maxim, there's another school there.
And, okay, and you're your local councilor, Councilor Filion?
Yes, it is.
And do you know what his view on this is?
Do I know?
What his view on the Willowdale Avenue cycle track?
On Willowdale, I have not spoken to him personally on that one.
Do you have any sense of where he's at on this?
Well, I know that he would like to do it.
Okay, so that, you just answered my question.
Yeah, I've heard from the people that that's his view.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Doug Morrison? Doug Morrison? Nathan Gomes?
Hello. So I'm here to, this is my second deputation. I'm here to discuss cycle tracks being planned on Willowdale Avenue. I live, I'd say about 200 meters away from Willowdale Avenue, north of Finch. And I guess what's happening in our neighborhood, you heard from the president of Silverview, is a bottleneck is being created between Finch Avenue and up to Bishop Avenue, as they are not actually physically reconstructing the area. They're painting lanes on and reducing the size of the lanes by 3.1 meters on each side. And already on Bishop Avenue, families getting home along Bishop, including myself, trying to pick up my kids. It's really, like it's backed up because cars are turning right and left, and the way it's being reconstructed will actually reduce the number of reduce the amount of space on those in that area. As I mentioned in my previous slide, there were 0 to 1.6% of people that actually use that road to get to work. My concerns with the design of the plan is that they're eliminating bus bays along the whole tract. In the staff report, it indicates that they are removing bus bays as part of AODA requirements. This is actually not a fact. In speaking with the Bayview-Cumber Neighborhood Association in Silverview, who confirmed with the Government of Ontario, this is not actually a requirement to eliminate the new standards that are being put in place are not consistent, and they require consultation. There was no consultation on the accessibility requirements. In addition to that, I attended the consultation that was held. On your website, it says 40 residents attended the consultation. That is not accurate because the staff report now says 40 participants. And the day before, there was email consultation, a social media post out that got all the Cycle Toronto people to come. The amount of actual residents who lived in the area were not consulted, and it was pushed. The plan is just being pushed forward, and it's going to have a huge impact on our area because a lot of us, a significant amount of us, drive to work in that area. And along that corridor, it's our only way past the traffic on Yonge Street, and it's right now it's used mostly by our residents who live and work commuting north out of the city to other parts of the city, and as well as using it to get to Finch Station. So there's a lot of traffic and congestion that will be created when those bus bays are removed, and that's of concern. And again, like I said, the staff report is not consistent with the AOD requirements that they're putting in place, and I think it's important that they follow the regulation that the Government of Ontario has suggested, and I think it's important for them to consult the people in the area as required by that regulation and that standard to actually include that as part of consultation. There were no disabled people in the consultation process. I most certainly did not receive any notification for this technical change. So, if there is a plan being put forth, I encourage you to communicate with the people of the area and have proper consultations, because less than 40 people and putting our whole arterial road that is basically where we push all our traffic in my neighborhood. I don't want to see a bottleneck created. I don't want to see those cars coming into my neighborhoods, hitting my kids on the street. I just want to make that clear, and that's why I came today, is just to speak my mind on the changes that are occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Thank you. Raj Demaraja? Thank you for coming. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Raj Dharmaraj. I'm from Bayview Comer Neighborhood Association. Thanks for the time. And like the previous speakers have actually pointed out, so my points are going to be somewhat similar. We feel that more consultation is required, like 40 people representing and then just giving the view is not full representation of the feedback what is required is to make this change. And again, we are definitely in favor of bike lanes, but again, the concern is that all the other factors are also taken into consideration, properly making any change for giving room for the bike lanes. The other concern is definitely the traffic on going south on Willowdale beyond Finch. It is going to definitely get bottleneck there, which is going just to feed more traffic and people cutting across the side roads where the normal residents are going to get impacted, where many of the roads don't even have sidewalks, so that will just going to just to increase risk in there. Where impatient drivers are going to find shortcuts just to bypass that bottleneck. And also the taking off the bus bays was spoken here, which is going to delay the traffic flow. And again, we also concerned about not enough consultation with regards to the Disability Act. Also, the decision is to make, we want more study done about how many people are actually using bikes down Willowdale, because we want the bike lane installation goes on priority where it best belongs to. So we want more studies about how many people are actually using cars and then how many people are using bikes down Willowdale, and proper studies before making any change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Wong has a question for you.
Thanks. So it says here that that the city wants to accommodate the bike lanes by narrowing the existing lanes that are there. And it says a painted buffer with physical separation, bollards and/or precast concrete is proposed to separate the travel lanes and the bicycle lanes, which seems to me that there's a way to actually put these in for a little while, see if they work, and then, circle back, and if they're like a huge failure, they can be revisited, right? So we're not building something permanent here. It's just pieces of cement and, those flexi posts that everyone seems to knock into. So would that be, were you aware of that? It says here in the report on page 11.
I'm aware of that one, but again, I'm not aware of whether that is going to be just a study or whether that is going to be permanent nature.
No, but would you find it more acceptable if these sort of less than permanent measures were put in, and then after, let's say, 18 months, they came back and they kind of saw what the impact was, so you could actually have a almost, it's not a pilot project, but you actually can evaluate their effectiveness?
That sounds better, but again, that is also given back to we are more consultation, because I myself can't
I
just
understand.
make a view.
You made that point. I understand
Yeah.
the point. Thank you. I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Any other questions for the deputant? Is there anyone else who's speaking on this matter? That's the list I have. No? All right, let's go to questions for staff. Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much. Let's start with the Willowdale Avenue project. Is it correct to assume that there will no be reduction in travel lanes?
That's correct. The Willowdale Avenue project is a minor arterial road with 16,000 vehicles a day. It has one lane in each direction with some turn lanes at intersections. We can accommodate these buffered bike lanes or cycle tracks through narrowing the width of the existing travel lanes, which is not something we often are able to do. In this case, there is space. There will be no reduction in through lanes between Empress and Finch. Left turn lanes at Byng and Empress would be removed. But we would have a right turn retained lane at Bishop and Finch.
So these bus bays, irrespective of the cycling project, were scheduled to be removed, correct?
That's correct. As part of the reconstruction, the bus bays don't currently meet the standards for the TTC bus ramp to be deployed onto the sidewalk and somebody in a mobility device to be able to disembark from the bus safely onto the sidewalk. So even without the bike lanes, the ramps would, the bus bays need to be widened or removed so that the bus pads can be widened.
Okay. On the Oakwood Village Vaughan Road project, have we examined whether or not the parking can be moved in the block that the deputant suggested to the opposite side of the street, to the north side, I believe?
There were concerns with the configuration of having the bike lane on the same side as the parking in this scenario because of the space available, and it would be a door zone. And so there is more space to be able to provide the parking on the south side so that a shared travel lane where cyclists can be safely further away from the doors is achievable in this scenario.
So that was the rationale for why the parking was being moved.
Yes, and we recognize that there have been some concerns about people about backing out of their driveways and the sight lines, and we would give generous sight lines for the parking spaces at the driveway locations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Any other questions for staff?
That's on the Willowdale one.
Speakers?
I have a motion that I can kind of, I'll just read
Is
it.
it ready to roll?
So this relates to the Willowdale bike lane. I mean, and I'll just say that Councillor Feeling's not here, so I wish he was, so that he could kind of tell us what he's thinking. So what I'm going to propose is that there be a 18-month review of after the installation of the Willowdale bike lanes that evaluates delays in traffic, use by cyclists, and other community issues. So I'm not going to stop this. The local councillor, if he has any concerns, can raise it at council. But I think to reflect the community's concern, and in the absence of the local councillor, I think they've raised some legitimate concerns. And after 18 months, it's a couple of seasons, they can look at the data, and the community can evaluate along with the local councillor the effectiveness of the bike lanes. Okay? Do you have questions?
Thank you. We should have that prepared for a vote. Councillor Layton,
To speak.
to speak.
Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to thank staff for bringing the report forward. I would have hoped that a Ward 11 project may have made it in this year, because we've got some work that we need to get done, but I know I have some reconstruction coming, which is probably when I'm going to see some of those projects come through. All change is hard, right? Change on our roads, if you've ever had to deal with a community that was divided on the issue of speed humps, for instance, you'll know. All change is hard. Staff spend months, in many cases, sometimes even years. I know with the case of Argyle, this has been in discussion for 3 years. It's one block. There is significant community debate over the appropriateness and what's happening. Everyone fancies themselves a transit planner. when it comes to Argyle Street. But the only transit planners we have in this room right now are sitting right here, and this is what they're recommending.
We have hundreds upstairs.
We probably have hundreds upstairs, but the only ones in this room are sitting right here, and this is the recommendation they're making. Whether it's on Vaughan Road, on Willowdale, on Argyle Street, they have spent months, and in the case of Argyle, I know for a fact, years thinking about this. Years. We need to trust their judgment that after council approved these routes, that their implementation in coming through in this document is the best from a safety standpoint, a best from the congestion standpoint, and the best that we can possibly do by way of community concerns. I don't see a reason for us to send any back for consultation. I don't see any need for us to go back and start evaluating every single bike lane months after they're put in, at great expense, I might add. I think, and I'm not sure what Councillor Minnan-Wong expects to accomplish once we change the route, change the road, which is happening. It's a rebuild. The road is permanently being changed, and the bus bays are being removed anyhow. What we expect to achieve by going back in.
The truth?
When the lanes itself aren't being, the lanes of traffic transportation or of flow through of traffic aren't being directly impacted. So I would urge the committee to support the staff recommendation in front of us and only the staff recommendation in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Any other ones to speak? Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are, believe it or not, 2 bike lanes in Scarborough, in my ward, so I'm surprised there was none in all of Scarborough. Well, maybe more, but in my ward, there's 2 that are in this report, and those are on Conlins and Lawrence. And I just want to thank staff because they really engaged with the community and talked with them to alleviate some of their concerns. So thank you for all your hard work on this file. I am particularly excited by these 2 bike lanes because they connect with the Meadowway that we hope will one day be built, as well as the Scarborough Waterfront Trail. And I mentioned earlier, I think both of those are incredibly important, recreational, but also corridors that could be used for people to ride to work in the future. And so I'm very delighted this is the first step, and want to thank staff again for their hard work on this file, because I know it wasn't easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKelvey. Anyone else to speak? I took carriage of a motion from Councillor Nunziata, if we could put that on the screen. It's referenced on page 5 of the report. I think the purpose of this motion is really to sort of set a timing and a location on where this report will go, and I said I would move it on her behalf. I'll save most of my comments for council. Any other speakers? We can start voting. Okay, let's put those motions on the screen and
I could ask for a recorded vote on Councilor Minnan-Wong's motion. Please.
Sorry, we're just having
I don't think it's worded properly. All right, the motion's on the screen. The motion is on the screen, and a recorded vote has been requested. All those in favor?
All those in favor of the motion before you, Councillor Pasternak, Deputy Mayor Min Wong. All those opposed? Councillor Cole, Councillor Layton, Councillor McKelvey. That motion does not carry.
All right. Next motion. Okay. Motion's before you. It's on behalf of Councillor Nunziata. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. It's carried unanimously. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. No, we have some walk-on motions. The item is done. So, item number 14, this was blocked to council. Councillor Perks had problems with it, and this was bike infrastructure at schools. Staff would like to start working on it, even though it's a rollout in 2020. They want to start negotiating their agreements with the various school boards. Everyone's complaining that we're not moving fast enough. Well, council wanted to slow things down, so we brought it to committee because this is a committee that gets things done. Yeah, so, did you say you had questions for staff on this item?
I did, and I asked offline.
Oh, so we're good to go. So let's put it to a vote.
Which item are we on here? Is it?
This is biking infrastructure at schools.
Oh, sure.
And this
Yeah.
was the item that,
We have newsletters to fill, Denzel.
all right. Anyway, all those in favor? All those in favor of the motion? Carry unanimously. We know better than council. Item 15 is Councillor Cressy. I don't know whether this can go on the screen or take a quick look at it. City Council authorized the General Manager of Transportation Services in consultation with the City Solicitor to negotiate, enter and execute an amendment to the existing lease of city decommissioned underground pipe system with Zao Canada, Inc. to remove the portion of city-owned pipe generally located between Wellington Street and Windsor Street to Clarence 15. To include the replacement of conduits to the scope of the lease and such other terms and conditions satisfactory to the General Manager of Transportation Service in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. Oh my gosh, this goes on for another half page. I'm not going to read all this stuff. Don't read it. Do you want to read the screen on your own time? What do you think? Okay. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. So item 16 is the Greenway. It's been simplified. We do have a deputant. Yeah. Yeah, so we do have a deputant on item 16, Darnell Harris. Thank you very much for coming. And just an FYI, the motion has been simplified since it first came on the floor. So it's simplified.
Could you just reset the clock, please, if you don't mind? Could you reset the time, I guess? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you about this today. So our Greenway is a concept for park conservancy within Northwest Toronto. The intention would be to have a 21-kilometer park conservancy that would go across Finch, and this has the support of the Duke Heights BIA, multiple BIAs, and organizations all across from York University to Seneca, Humber. But it would crucially link the manufacturing areas with the schools and the universities and with the housing, the major housing along the area. Why is this necessary and helpful? Because the current proposal, give me 1 second, sorry. Right, it just keeps skipping. There we go. The current proposal to put in the lanes effectively deals with something like this. Is you have a tractor, you have a massive truck that rumbles by, that can, multiple tons. People don't feel safe in that environment. So what, crucially, does a Greenway provide? Well, right now, as I'm sure councillors know, you deal with a lot of that. This is an extremely inefficient issue in that, of course, you have to be, a lot of these drains get blocked. You have to constantly be pumping guck out of these drains. That's extra costs. Instead, you can have a rain garden sort of barrier like this, which you don't have those problems because the dirt doesn't get into that layer. In effect, what you're able to have is you're able to have a pathway that goes along a street and also allows for the various activation in areas across. So crucially, we're seeking to look at, we're putting forward three things. One, at least switching the bike lane off the road, but really what we're looking for and proposing is a greenway that would be constituted under a park conservancy, would allow for efficiencies, which the province has sought and certainly has been discussed, of being able to have private funding supporting the work and the upkeep in this area. And this has been something that both the BIAs and the Councillor Pertz has supported before. And then crucially, of course, emergency access is a very big issue. Currently, you speak to police and fire, and they'll tell you they can't even get through the streets because they're so clogged. Instead, being able to use this pathway, which they would be able to do, would make a big difference for fire, EMS, and police. And in terms of community support, this has been a multi-year project. Certainly, there are letters of support to see this properly looked at from the Albion Islington Square, Duke Heights BIA, organizations and businesses. Plug and Drive certainly has been one of the big supporters up there as well. York University has written a letter of support, and the list goes on. So at this point, I will yield my time to the chair.
Okay, great. Any questions? Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there something like this similar elsewhere? Like, what are you using as a precedence here?
Yes, there is. Of course, within the City of Toronto, you have the Bentway, which is in fact a land conservancy, and the Evergreen is another example of another land conservancy within the City of Toronto that has been very successful at stewarding public land. Then you have something like the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. In Indianapolis is an extensive trail around 13 kilometers long, connects communities, has caused about $1 billion in attributable benefits from that. 95% of the people feel safe being able to use that pathway, and it's being able to offer other benefits to the community as well. Certainly, especially in a particular case like this, where, and I should say it was funded almost entirely by private donations and by public grants at a certain level from the federal level of government in the U.S. So there are good examples of park conservancies. The Resilient Toronto report speaks to the importance of pulling on these exact things, the philanthropic arguments, as well as new ways of being able to take care of the streets in the city. And all of this, in a lot of ways, is pulled from city reports, both in terms of the Parkland report, the Resilient Toronto report, and other reports that have urged that the city look at these sorts of successful nonprofit arrangements by where city land can be stewarded at better cost to the taxpayers.
And then, thanks for clarifying some of what you meant by mobility infrastructure. When I saw mobility infrastructure and stormwater protection together, I was thinking, I don't know, gondolas or something. But in terms of the stormwater and the picture that you showed there, like, is there anything that needs to be done additionally for like protection from vector, disease or mosquitoes or things like that, where you have these standing waters? Like, so where has this been implemented?
Yeah.
What kind of risks are there associated with that, and how is that managed?
Sure. I mean, I should say that this is, there are different examples of blue-green infrastructure across the city of Toronto. The TRCA has been a great leader, including also the Credit Valley Conservation Authority has been a great leader in this. The entire intent of green infrastructure is to not have standing water. If you're having standing water, frankly, you're doing it wrong, because you're not having the percolation of the water, and that's what it does. You get a lot of standing water and ice melting and things on suburban roadways right now, because they, in the doing of what they have now, it's all been hard packed, so nothing goes through there. The snow simply falls, freezes, melts, and it's a big liability mess, not just for the city, but also for the people who have to trudge through it.
Okay, so that water is moving.
Yes, and it would slowly percolate in the soil, and it works all year round.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the deputants? I just have a couple. There's a lot of infrastructure going in along the same route. Finch West LRT, there's Toronto Water Work, there's repaving, transportation, Toronto Hydro. How do you overlay all of those different projects which are happening over multiple years with this plan?
That's a good question, and that's part of the conversation that we would frankly like to have as part of this discussion. Of course, you have Jane, you have Kipling, which is being looked at as part of this, because they're on the areas that council has identified as places for small businesses to pop up in residential tower areas, as well as you have, work and reconstruction going on. But that'd be part of the discussion, certainly. And in the Resilient Toronto report, it urges working with all those committees and groups to be able to get a better sense of when we can put these projects forward.
So you've had a number of meetings. I think you've met with at least one other councillor. I know you met with me. You met with city staff. I thought I read something that you met with the mayor as well. What has their response been?
Councillor Perutz has been extremely supportive. In fact, in the last term of council, he put forward a motion looking at this. I didn't have the opportunity to meet with the mayor as yet, but of course, I met with you. The response, should I say, from staff that I have met across the city, both in terms of green, of course, there are different staff in different departments. It's a question of, what are we going to do? Are we going to be able to take advantage of money-saving opportunities like this to be able to save money for the city, both in terms of long and short-term reconstruction costs, save in terms of upkeep, for example, and make, our streets both more pleasant as well as cost less?
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay. Questions for staff? Speakers? Well, I'll speak because I have a motion. So we've sort of simplified it from the original motion that was circulated at the beginning of the meeting. And what we want to do is we want to get a report back from staff on how this can possibly work. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I've seen some of the preliminary designs. I thought it's a well thought out concept. As I mentioned in my questions to the deputant, there's a lot of infrastructure going along the same route. How you make it all work is a real challenge. But when you're looking at infrastructure, it is the number one issue across many municipalities, both here and in the United States. As a matter of fact, one of the only things that they agree on south of the border among Republicans and Democrats, is the need for a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure investment package. Whether they'll get together on it is another story. But no matter where you go in the city, infrastructure is really the name of the game, whether it's transit, whether it's Toronto Water, whether it's Toronto Hydro, bridges, highways, roads. Infrastructure is really key. And of course, stormwater, and management and and our resiliency. And it's also nice to see that there's something going along within the inner suburbs, which is often left out of many of the different creative ideas that are happening across the city. So I will move this motion, and we will stay on top of it. We look forward to this report back, and we will stay in touch. And we thank you very much for coming today and talking about this important issue. If people want to take a look at the motion on the screen. Yep. So just to clarify, I have substituted this motion for, yep. Okay, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. And I believe this is the last item. Item 17. This one, sorry, there's one more item. Yeah, we have one more item. I'm sorry, when I said this is the last item, it's the one we're doing now. Item 17 is the last item. Councillor Cole, question for staff, anybody? Speakers? Well, Councillor Cole, I think you have to speak here. You're just moving the motion? All those in favor? That carries unanimously. I think we're done here, folks. Thank you very much. It was a very productive day. Yes. Enjoy the rest of the day. Meeting adjourned.
Good job. You're welcome.